It's time with JMU Hall of Famer and someone who knows a hell of a lot about taking it to the house.
Joyce breaks a tackle and goes in for a touchdown. Another spectacular run by Delvin Joyce.
Delvin Joyce brings his unique perspective to the podcast to break down all things he's seeing about JMU football, with a little help from EPA King Jack Fitzpatrick and Bennett Conlon.
Here he goes. He's going to try to beat the punter. He does. He's gone. And that is a touchdown.
Welcome into To the House.
Getting jerked back and forth. Oh, he broke his ankles. Now he's got an entourage. And he's got a touchdown.
Now, here's Delvin Joyce with Jack Fitzpatrick and Bennett Conlon.
What's going on, JMU Nation? It is your host, Delvin Joyce, the People's Choice. I am joined, as always, by my guy, Jack Fitzpatrick, a.k.a. Jay Feezy, a.k.a. the EPA King. Welcome to another episode of To the House. What's going on, Jack?
I'm going to take what you just said to me, Delvin, and we are about to delve into a fantastic episode. I don't think I've had that much fun watching a football game in quite some time, probably since the last Coastal game.
BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything sports betting. Every stat, matchup, breakdown, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during games. With the largest catalog of odds on everything from football, MLB playoffs, NHL, NBA, to political props. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here.
Check out the JMU Sports News Podcast with Bennett and Jack. New episodes drop in the middle of every single week, previewing the upcoming week and recapping the previous week. It's all part of the JMU Sports News Network, your home for To the House and the JMU Sports News Podcast.
That was a lot of fun. And for those of you who are keeping score at home, it seems like we have Coastal Carolina's number. So, the first thing that I want to lead off with, we talked about this in last week's episode. We said that, we really wanted to see how the team would respond. And I think I said I wanted to see how JMU Nation would respond. Coming back to Bridgeforth, not necessarily excited about the loss to ULM. And when I tell you that when I turned my television on to watch this game, because I could not be there, I got so fired up and I was so proud of JMU Nation. I mean, the way that we showed up in this whiteout crowd on ESPN national television, I thought it was absolutely electric. Jack, what were your thoughts about the crowd?
The culture has changed. I mean, I remember not too long ago when I was a student there during the end of the FCS days, 2015 to 2019, when I was there, I think there was maybe one sellout a season, maybe. And even then, after the first quarter, it was empty. So I've been seeing some people like, oh man, I wish they stayed through the second half. Folks, it was a beatdown. I would have left at halftime. Like, I would have left, gotten myself some sticky nugs, a nice Greg Brady over there at Billy Jack's, and watched it from a bar somewhere rather than watch that beatdown there. It was awesome to see that place rocking, absolutely packed to the gills. I love the student involvement because I never thought I'd see this type of student involvement.
It was insane. I thought it was phenomenal. I mean, I thought ESPN did a really good job covering the game. I thought Matt Berry and the other guy did a fantastic job calling the game. And, I think our home crowd is absolutely an advantage. Not necessarily because the noise. I don't know that our stadium is quite compact enough to create the type of noise. I do think it can be disruptive, but I do think it's a lot of the energy and the excitement that our team feeds off of when they run into that stadium and they see that everybody is behind them. And I feel like, our team sort of felt like, when you were a kid, Jack, and you did something wrong and you have to go home to your parents and you're like, man, I hope our parents aren't really that upset. And then your parents are like, yo, we got your back. It's all good. Right. And I feel like JMU Nation said to our team, hey, we got your back. It's all good. because no one, and I mean no one, Jack, felt worse about that game at ULM, I can promise you, than those players. I mean, I was distraught. Imagine how you felt the next day. You were distraught, but I promise you the team felt even worse. And so for them to come back, run in the Bridgeforth and see that JMU Nation still had their back, I'm telling you that got the team off to a fantastic start. I knew it was going to be a good game on the opening kickoff, Jack, when George Pettaway broke it out and, of course, runs to the sideline, takes out Coach Senior. I don't know if you saw that on the broadcast. Coach Senior gets taken out, Bob Chesney's dad, who's a volunteer on the staff. He falls on the ground, his glasses fall off, and he gets up. I don't know if you saw this. He gets up, and he's fired up talking crap and headbutting players and stuff. I was like, yo, we are going to win this game. Did you see that?
Dude's got more energy than I do, and I think he's 50 years my senior. Like, that dude is so much fun to watch on the sideline. He bounces up. At first, it looked like it could have been a pretty nasty fall. Like, his legs got taken out from him. He goes straight down. The glasses come off. I was like, uh-oh. And then he jumps up and starts bouncing around. I was like, hell yeah, Bob Senior. You get after it, volunteer. Imagine being in retirement and just being like, I'm just going to hang out with my son and help him coach a football team.
Yeah, that was sick, man. That was one of my favorite moments of the entire game. But of course, we said last week that, this would have to be a big game for our running backs. And I'm excited to see that, we got 222 yards of total offense, total rushing yards this week. We got more rushing yards than we got passing yards. I think that's the first time that's happened this year. I think we only threw for 199 yards. Again, we got to get on the stat guy. Can we just get one more yard, my guy, so we can go over 200 on the passing? I mean, who's keeping stats at JMU? Now, of course, we had some rushing yards from the quarterback, but 174 of those 222 rushing yards actually came from the running back room. And my guy, my favorite player on the team, George Pettaway, GP, had a career high 89 rushes on 13 carries. That's an average of 6.8 yards per carry. So outstanding running back room performance. A lot of guys got to touch the ball. Jack, what did you think about the RBs and the offense in general?
That running game is so much better than last year. Like, just so much better than last year. George Pettaway is a monster. And by the way, they're doing all of this without their presumed RB1. They're kind of all-American Athletic Conference player from a season ago, Iowa Day, who has a career average per touch of over 7 yards, doing this all without him. Still unsure if he's going to play this season, whatever is going to happen there. But George Pettaway has stepped up in his absence in a big way. Wayne Knight, every time he touches the ball, I want him to get more touches. And Tyler Purdy, he gets 8 touches. He averages 4.5 yards per carry. You say it every time. Dude falls forward for 3 yards no matter what. He just is the model of consistency. That running back room puts and no shade to the past years. I think it's just the way they're coached up and the way the schemes are looking. It looks so much more dynamic than years past.
Yeah, and Purdy, what I like about Purdy, he's not flashy, right? Like, he's not going to wow you.
You can say that again. You can say that again.
He's not going to wow you, but he does a lot of things that don't necessarily show up on the stats. And I will tell you, if you go back and watch that Coastal Carolina game, I mean, that guy stepped up and made some big-time pass protection, linebacker blitz pickups during that game that gave us time to make some big throws. Watch the throw to Yamir Knight. I think it was on a 3rd and 8 in the first half on the first touchdown drive. I mean, our guy steps up and makes a big block to give AB3 some time. So really, really proud of this running back room. Is there any update? I have not heard anyone mention Io Adei. Like, is there any update on where he is and what's happening?
We haven't heard anything on him or Tyshawn Wyatt. I would not be shocked at this point. This is pure speculation that neither of them play the rest of the season and maybe just try to pursue red shirts, maybe more so Tyshawn than Io Adei. But Adei's played 2 games technically this season. He has 2 more, and then he would lose his redshirt year. We'll see what happens, but there's been no update on Adei.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. Well, listen, I mean, the offense is clicking without him. I know they would be great with him. And then on that opening drive, I mean, we were clicking, right? The offense was doing very well. AB3 looked very comfortable in the pocket. And then we have the fumble in plus territory. And the first thing I said was, right, I mean, sitting on the couch, I'm like, oh, snap, here we go again. But that's where our defense came in and stepped up, forced him to a 3-and-out. And then we get the ball and we drive it right back down the field, capped by a great play by my guy, GP, on the quick screen. So when AB3 fumbles that ball, like, what's going through your mind at that point? And are you concerned?
You could say, oh, snap. There were some other words that I think were going through my head, and words I don't want to say on the podcast because they were not safe for work, not family friendly by any means. I just was holding my head and I was just like, no, just hold on to the football. No, like I really thought at that point, because Coastal I thought was good. Apparently JMU just has their number, but I thought for sure that was going to be the point where they would then drive back down the field. They would score. They would get all of this momentum and just take the fans out of it. But that doesn't happen. That defense steps up in a huge way.
Yeah, the defensive stop was huge, but I think what was even bigger was the fact that AB3 shook that off, right?
Yeah.
Because the ghost of ULM past could have been looming large in that game. AB3 shook that off and literally drove the team right back down the field, put up points, and just looked really, really comfortable in the pocket. Now, overall, if you look at our offensive performance, we had 20 first downs. We had 9 receivers catch a pass during that game. Our guy, Tajee Hudson, finally catches a pass for the season. Who would have thought 6 games in, he'd have his first catch? But I got to say, even though it was a quick screen, he makes a fantastic run after catch. He looked really explosive, and I'm very excited to see him actually get more touches as the season goes on, because that guy, we're going to need him down the stretch. We had Jaden Miles on a reverse. Ymir Knight still looks explosive at the receiver position. I think he caught 5 passes, several big ones. Dollison catching passes for first downs and touchdowns. I think that's all he does. And then Cam Ross only caught 1 pass, but if you look at the pass that he caught on that 3rd and 26 or something crazy, I mean, the guy catches the ball like 5 yards down the field and explodes for like 20. Like, I mean, he is so fast. We absolutely have to find a way to get him more touches. And then, of course, your favorite player on the team, Jack, you love tight ends, Taylor Thompson. I mean, the guy caught so many passes, but the 33-yard touchdown pass, this is where I'm going to say that's a turning point for us on offense, because what we have seen is that AB3 has thrown some really good balls that are in contested spaces, and our receivers had not been able to sort of come down with some of these passes, right? These are the places where these would have been drops. And that pass to Taylor Thompson, first off, I thought was an NFL caliber pass, but I thought Taylor Thompson made an NFL caliber catch, especially in traffic. So overall thoughts on the receiver room and that play and that catch from our guy, Taylor Thompson.
I'll start with that catch because it was an NFL type throw, NFL type catch, reminiscent of the Ball State. I think it was the Ball State game where he threw just another extremely tight window pass. I think it was to Ymir Knight for his first touchdown of the season. Kind of a similar type of play. Love that they're scheming that up. Love that Alonzo has the confidence in his arm and honestly the confidence in his wide receivers and tight ends to make that throw, because they have dropped a good number of passes this year. So it's good to see that he still has that type of trust in them to continue going to passes to tight windows like that in high leverage moments. Taylor Thompson, I've been saying it. He's the dude. He's going to be the guy. He's the go-to receiver. But Delvin, I wanted to ask you this, because the ghosts of ULM could come creeping back with that fumble, with kind of the slower start there for Alonzo Barnett. Even the ghosts of maybe the Gardner-Webb game, the ghosts of the Bucknell game from a year ago, running out of the tunnel, seeing all of those fans there for you after you're coming off of kind of a heartbreaking loss, and then you fumble it and the fans stay there and continue cheering you on. I would like to know your perspective, and from kind of a player perspective, how does that impact your mental? Do you notice the fans getting into it when you're running out of the tunnel? Do you think that played an impact in Barnett not being phased that much?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like I said earlier, man. I mean, when you see that people have your back, then you can shake those things off more easy. And I think for AB3, it's not necessarily about the fans. Like when the game starts, you feed off that energy, you're fired up. Maybe in between plays, you can sort of see that. But I think what was more important is that his teammates came over and said, "Yo, we got your back. It's all good." I think he said that in his post-game presser. Defense came over and said, "We got your back. It's all good. We got you." And so I think for AB3, it was probably easier for him knowing that he had just let his team down after they just drove down the field. Again, with that ghost of ULM past, I think that he was able to shake that off more quickly. Now, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I do believe that AB3 has sort of lost a bit of his touch on the deep ball a little bit.
I don't want to bring it up. I didn't want to bring up that.
Yeah, these last 2 weeks, he's sort of missed some of those deep ball throws. I think he missed Yamir Knight on a really, it would have been a tough pass, but that's a throw that we expect him to make on sort of a corner route, like sort of a sail route. And then I think he missed it was either Cam Ross or Dollison. It was Dollison on like a post, and he had him. He just sort of overthrew him just a little bit. Now, on that pass to Dollison, I think that the defender was sort of in his face, kind of sped up his motion a little bit. But it does seem like he sort of lost his deep ball swag a touch. And I'm going to attribute that to the fact that, he's been sacked and hurried a lot over the last several weeks. And I think in his internal clock, he's not as poised on some of those longer developing plays as he was early in the season. And I think he just sort of has to settle down and get a little trust back in his O-line and his running backs that they're going to pick these blocks up. Because if you look at this game, Coastal brought a lot of pressure, but he was only sacked once. And I did not really see where he was pressured a whole lot. So I guess for you, are you concerned about his ability to kind of come back and make some of these deep ball throws?
I kind of want to go back to the first couple games of the season and see how often, and it's tough to kind of see on the broadcast angle, but see how often he was getting too high cover 2 looks with the 2 safeties kind of blanketing that and taking away the deep ball a little bit. Maybe he has different windows he's looking at. I also feel like a deep ball is a little bit more of a high variance play where maybe he was just not getting lucky because he clearly has the skill, but he was getting on the good side of that variance a little bit more often. And now he's kind of regressing back to the mean just a little bit with the deep balls. I do worry a little though, that teams have just gone, "Oh, we're just going to throw 2 safeties up top. We're just going to give him cover 2 looks and make him beat us." So I'm very interested, may go back this week if I have time and see what type of defenses he was throwing into in weeks 1 to Ball State week, whatever that was.
Yeah.
And see that.
No, you're absolutely right. There were some throws on Saturday or Thursday that he absolutely got away with a couple. Like, he threw some balls into traffic. He threw a ball into double coverage with 2 safeties high. That should have been intercepted. Just a Coastal, the guy just let the ball go right through his hands. So I think he got away with some throws. So I hope this week, as they go back into practice, he's working on some of that execution and just executing some of those plays. And I think it will also come down to some of those intermediate routes and just hitting on some of those, getting the ball into space to some of our playmakers like Yamir Knight, like Cam Ross, like Dollison, like Petaway, and even Taylor Thompson. Those sort of things settle your nerves a little bit and then open up the big plays downfield. Now, we also saw that J.C. Evans, the heralded freshman quarterback, came in the game early, right? This was not garbage time. This was like, I think, first quarter, maybe the second or third series, he comes into the game. And I'm like, all right, what's going on? Now, apparently they said they had a package for him. It turns out that package, we talked about this on our group chat, was JC right, JC left. but it looked like they had an actual package for him. Was that a surprise to see him come into the game that early for you?
It was kind of hilarious because the packages were, all right, JC, get the snap, run left. All right, JC, get the snap, run right. He was good the first couple of times, and it felt like every time he came in, Coastal was like, oh, we know what's coming. Let's just put all of our guys on the line of scrimmage and have him beat us. I am a little surprised because he played a snap against ULM. I believe it was when Barnett's helmet came off, and he was the guy that came in for one play, something along those lines, right, against ULM.
That's right.
And then for Coastal coming in, I was thinking that they were going to redshirt JC Evans, but if they have packages for him and they plan to use him throughout this season, I will be very interested to see if they decide to burn that red shirt with these packages. I wasn't so much as shocked with JC coming in for those run plays as much as I was as the game went on. We saw no Dylan Morris.
Yeah.
Morris did not come in for any of the garbage time snaps. I think became JC Evans. We saw some Billy Atkins. We saw a Blake Kendall appearance. We didn't see a Dylan Morris.
We saw everybody play quarter. I think you took a couple of snaps at
I did.
quarterback.
I was in Harrisonburg that night, and Chesney looked back and he said, "You want to try?" And I said, "Sure, why not?"
Yeah. I mean, we literally had everybody play quarterback. I was especially excited though to see Blake Kendall take the victory formation snaps. I mean, you talk about a kid who has probably worked his butt off in practice. He's been a great team player and might be one of the most athletically gifted players on the team because I think he plays baseball as well. It was really cool to see him get in and get to take those snaps. And by the way, if you watch the broadcast, the dude was fired up about it. A great sport, a great teammate, and just, exemplifies, I think, what is the JMU football attitude. But to your point, I was very surprised as well not to see Dylan Morris. But I would also be very surprised if they burn JC Evans's red shirt. At this point in the season, we're 6 games in. We only have 6 games left, plus or minus bowl game, plus or minus playoffs, right?
Playoffs.
But I would be very surprised at this point if we see that. I would say that they may be setting up, some sort of, surprise trick play with JC, because literally the guy's taken like 12 snaps and all 12 snaps have been QB draw. And so it would be cool to see him do some sort of, hey, I might run the QB draw, but I might do a pop pass on the goal line. Hopefully I'm not giving away trade secrets right now. The other thing, that I noticed on offense, and then we'll segue over to the defense. I would like to see Barnett get down on some of those, run plays. Like I want him to watch some early Russell Wilson film. Russell Wilson was a master at scrambling, but getting down and not actually taking any hits. I'd really like to see Barnett because he took some shots again the other night, on the sideline. And those are some of the unnecessary shots. I did love, though, the heart and the spirit that he had on that goal line play to actually get that ball in the end zone. I didn't think he got in at first, but the way that he, first off, made a couple of people miss and then just heart determination on the goal line and said, I'm going to score this touchdown. And I think that's about the 3rd time he's done that this year. I was very, very impressed. Loved seeing that. But the first half, we were great on 3rd down. I think we saw what we needed to see on 3rd down. Second half, we were awful on 3rd down. I think part of that is because we sort of tucked the playbook away in the second half and just said, let's run out the clock and not get anybody hurt. But it was a pretty boring performance in the second half after Dylan Williams' touchdown.
Yeah. I thought we were about to score like 65 on them. Like it felt like that's where we were going. And then, they closed the playbook and they said, this game's done. They can't move on our defense. We could let them just have the ball for the rest of the game and they will not be able to score on us.
Yeah, we should have scored. And I think AB3 said this in the presser. I mean, that should have been a 50 points or more performance. And for whatever reason, some of those drives just stalled and I don't think they should have, but they did. I thought the offensive line played really well overall. I think their run blocking was great. We were able to get the edge and get Petaway out on the edge and to the boundary a lot during that game and showing his speed and his patience and his vision. We did have some pre-snap penalties. At this point, it's sort of becoming a trend. So I would imagine that Coach Chesney is working on that with the team as we speak, right? But overall, I thought the offense was absolutely solid. So Jack, let's segue over to the defense. And, this is, I would say that this is probably the best performance of the defense, even better than the Ball State performance, because this was a markedly better offensive team than was Ball State. And we go back to that defensive identity. It is once again takeaways. We got 2 more takeaways in this game. We're still leading the nation, I think, with 17 total and 12 interceptions, which is wild. And, the big thing about takeaways is it's one thing to get a takeaway. It's another thing to score points off the takeaway. And of course, we had Lord Summerall the third. I think if you haven't, if you are like the third or fourth of your name right now on a JMU roster, you are a baller. But Summerall the third played that play, I think, was just as pivotal for us in this victory as the ULM scoop and score last week was against us, because not only do you get the turnover, but when your defense actually scores the points on that turnover, it changes the entire complexion of the game. So what were your thoughts overall on the defense and their ability to just shut Vasco and that Coastal offense down?
All right, I got some nerd stats here for you with just how dominant this performance was. 14 total drives for Coastal Carolina in this game. Their average starting field position, this is a shout out to Ryan Hansen and the special teams. They started on average on their own 16 and averaged 4.4 plays per drive. So for everyone, including myself, that was like, I want to see more 3 and outs. They're getting the turnovers. They're allowing some empty yards, but man, it feels like there's a lot of these 6-play, 7-play, 8-play drives. I'd love to see just a 3 and out. Essentially, that's what they held them to for this entire game. They averaged just 16 yards per drive. Coastal had negative 0.4 expected points added per play, which is in the second percentile of all games. So it was one of the worst performances an offense could have had. The defense did everything right. The special teams to kind of bring it in with the defense. If the defense and special teams were the only ones that scored in this game, JMU still would have won. Like, they didn't need their offense to show up. Like, the defense was just so dominant against a mobile quarterback, which is something that we've seen historically give the Duke some trouble. Didn't give them any trouble. They didn't let them run well. They didn't let them pass well. The bringing Chauncey Logan back, although he kind of rotated drives, wasn't fully back. That was huge for the secondary. Terrence Spence continues. You can just go down a laundry list of names about who played well. That defense was lights out.
Defense was, I thought they were incredible. And thanks for the EPA stats. That was, because it's really cool. I think for me, it's really cool to see it with my eyes, right? But to see some of those advanced metrics sort of bear out what I saw with my eyes, I think is really cool. And, they didn't get Vasco on the ground. So we said it last week. The guy's only been sacked twice this year. They've done a really good job of protecting him. He's done a really good job of getting rid of the ball quick. So they never really got him on the ground, but they really shut the dude down. So, Coastal only had 181 total yards, 102 passing, 79 rushing, and 40 of those passing yards was actually on one play. So we held a team who came into the game averaging 38 points a game, second behind us, right? We hit our number right on the number, right? We averaged 39 a game. We scored 39.
Got it.
Crazy. But we took a team that was averaging 38 points a game and held them to only 7, right? 8 first downs, 3 out of 14 third down conversion, and they had 10 punts. So just really, to your point, I feel like we've struggled sort of getting off the field as a defense, and to force them into 10 punts, I thought was phenomenal.
Another advanced stat here for you. So a successful play in advanced metrics is pretty simply defined as, on first and second down, did you gain 50% of the necessary yards for a first down? On first and 10, did you pick up 5? On second and 5, did you pick up 2.5? On third down, did you pick up 100% of the yards needed for a first down? So on third and 2, third and 3, did you get the first down? That's what a successful play is defined as. Coastal Carolina, had 24% of all of their plays run as a successful play. So they ran just 12 successful plays of their 69 total plays. And that is the worst mark across all of college football.
That week?
That week, yeah.
Okay, wow. I mean, that's insane. So I feel like this defense is sort of finding its stride, and I was really excited to see Summerall make that play. For one, because I feel like he was a guy coming into this season. You know, we look at him; he's a Power 4 transfer. I know he went to University of Florida, then maybe down to South Florida. He transferred, and then back to another Group of 5 team. Comes to JMU. But he was someone that I circled and said, "Yo, this dude is going to have a major impact." And he hadn't really shown up in any of the previous 5 games. And so it was nice to see him make that kind of play, because I think he's doing things that are disrupting offenses, maybe just not necessarily showing up in the stat book. Our guy T. Spence, of course, gets another pick. I think the guy leads the nation in interceptions, or he's at least tied. But he just has that nose for the ball. Comes up with a pick after our guy, the true freshman KJ Flo from Charlotte, North Carolina, steps up and just, makes a fantastic tip ball that just lands right in T. Spence's hands, right? The guy's always around the football. And then the last 2 people that I want to shout out personally, Jacob Dobbs. I mean, I think we take this guy for granted because he is just a machine who does whatever is needed on the field. Not flashy, not glamorous, but he led the team with 9 tackles. He leads the team right now with 42 total tackles, and he's just a monster who has to be an all Sun Belt performer this year. I would be surprised if he's not. So, and to your point, really good to see Chauncey back on the field.
Yeah, great to see Chauncey. Jacob Dobbs is such an interesting player to me, because he doesn't do anything flashy. He's always around the ball. He kind of reminds me of like a early 2000s linebacker, where they're just like a London Fletcher type, just in on every play, isn't going to make the flashy, like big truck stick in the backfield, probably isn't going to be in pass plays all that much, like in coverage, like intercepting a ball going the other way. Isn't like your modern day edge guy like TJ Watt or Micah Parsons, but he's just like your middle linebacker. You want Brian Urlacher, you want London Fletcher, you want Luke Kuechly, like these just middle linebackers. Their job is just to make the tackle, and he does that at an elite level.
That's him, bro. That dude is a football player. I mean, when I got a chance to meet him, he's got this intensity about him. And he just loves football. I mean, he's just a football player. Yeah. I mean, that's the only way you can describe him. He's nothing else. He's a football player. Now, you already shouted this out, but special teams, I think, played a really big role. And, I said it last week, Yamir Knight has not only proven that he is a capable punt return catch person, right? Because I know that's what Signetti and gang, that's what they like. They were like, put somebody out there that can catch the ball. We don't need any turnovers. Yamir Knight is very sure-handed, and he is running all over the field to catch the ball when, previously we had return guys who would just let that ball bounce and cost us 10 or 15 yards unnecessarily. So first off, he's catching the ball. The second thing, though, is he is absolutely becoming a return threat. And he is quickly going to build a reputation as a return guy in this league that you do not want to punt to. And I'm telling you, this guy is 1 block away. He's 1 missed tackle away from taking one to the house. And I am excited to see what he's going to do next, because that guy is explosive.
Delvin, as one of the greatest return men in JMU football history, I got to know, how does it feel watching not only Yamir Knight, but George Pettaway on kickoffs returning these? Like, what is it watching from home? Does it make you smile a little bit?
Yeah, bro, it makes me smile so much because, we haven't had a true return game, I don't think, since like D'Angelo Amos. And D'Angelo Amos had an opportunity had COVID not happened, had he not transferred to UVA. I don't think he transfers to UVA if not for COVID and maybe JMU season being in doubt. That guy was going to break my punt return record at JMU had he stayed that season. And so I was disappointed to see him leave because I wanted to see him break the record. I think Yamir Knight has an opportunity. If he stays at JMU for his entirety of his career, he's going to break my return records. What I like about him, though, is that I feel like he really makes good decisions. The challenge with a lot of these punt returners is that they give the guy running down the bullet, or the gunner, as we call him, they give the gunner way too much credit. Like those gunners who are running down on punt return, they are not tackling people. They're good off the line, and a lot of times they are receivers running down, and they can't tackle, right? I even played gunner in the NFL. I'm probably the worst tackler in the NFL at the time, but I'm running down as a gunner because I'm quick off the line and I can get down there and disrupt the punt returner. But my worst fear was that the punt returner was actually going to catch the ball and not fair catch it and make me tackle him. And I feel like Yamir understands that this first guy is not going to make the tackle. As a punt returner, you take pride in saying the first person that comes down is not going to make the tackle. And as he starts to build more confidence, you're going to see, I think, less fair catches when there's one guy in his face. Still make the decision to fair catch if there's a gang of people there. But one guy, don't fair catch that. Catch the ball, make somebody miss, and take it to the house. George Pettaway is also a weapon in the kickoff return game. I don't love our feature starting running back returning kicks. That is a very hard thing to do. Run a kick back 45 yards and then go straight into the backfield. But he's absolutely a weapon there. And I also think he's going to break one. So the specialists look amazing. Any update on Noe Ruelas, though? Because that is sort of a concern for me in our kicking game right now.
Yeah. Before we do that, don't discredit your tackling ability. 5 career tackles. I just pulled it up. You got 5 career tackles.
Yo, it's so funny, man. I got a great story. So I'm playing gunner, and we were playing against the Eagles. I think we're playing at Lincoln or the Vet. I can't remember where, had they changed stadiums yet. And I told you Brian Westbrook was sort of my nemesis when I was at JMU. He was at Villanova. So when he comes to JMU, he has a big game. And so when I go to Villanova, I'm like, oh, I'm going to have a big game against Westbrook. So we're playing the Eagles. Of course, he lands in the NFC East with me. We're playing the Eagles. We're playing them in Philadelphia. And I'm the gunner. He's the punt returner. And I make a killer move on somebody on the line to get off the line. I'm running down free. I see him looking in the sky. I think he called fair catch. Maybe he didn't. I don't even remember. But I'm like, yo, I finally got him. And I run down, and when I tell you Jack Fitzpatrick, I smashed this dude. Now, the only problem is that I hit him while the ball was still in the air. But when I tell you, I finally got to smash Brian Westbrook. It was such a great hit. I think the picture is on Google Images somewhere. But I absolutely destroyed the dude in that game. I actually felt bad. He and I were good friends while we were in the league. But so any update on Noe Ruelas, though? We had the true freshman who was kicking off, I think, and or kicking field goals. Some of the kickoffs didn't really necessarily go that deep. So what's going on there?
Yeah, it was true freshman Max Lipinski, I think is how you pronounce his name, kicking the field goals. Noe was dressed pregame, but from my sources inside the stadium, he was not, aka Tim, he was not kicking during warmups, I believe was what I heard, but he was dressed. So okay. I don't know if it's because that always throws me for a loop. Like Iowa Day, he was dressed before the UNC game, and then we haven't seen him since. So I don't know if Noe just wanted to dress with the guys and just hang out with them in his uniform and look all cool or what the deal was. But he was dressed, didn't really go through, I think, really kicking warmups. And
do we know what kind of injury it is, though? Like, or is that?
I don't even think we know that yet.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, listen, I think that's going to be a big one because that guy was a weapon for us. And we're about to go play a game this coming week as we transition to Georgia Southern now. We're about to go play a game where every point is absolutely going to matter. And the last time we went down to Statesboro, Georgia, we were 5-0. We were nationally ranked in the AP poll, or maybe it was the coaches poll, and we were absolutely on a roll. And we went down and somehow we found ourselves in a track meet and we got beat. And this time we're going down. We're 5-1. Even though we got that one blemish on the record, we kind of got our swagger back with this Coastal Carolina win. And I'm telling you, Jack Fitzpatrick, this environment will not be, the kind of semi-hostile environment that we saw at ULM. This will be a true, legit, hostile environment with some serious fans, a community that is absolutely behind the school, and a team with a very rich tradition. So this will be fun. And I'm pretty sure, I don't know if this game is sold out, but I'm pretty sure it's close to a sellout, especially after what they did last week, which was absolutely insane. Did you see that?
What, they were down 23-3 in the fourth quarter and won 24-23 against Marshall.
They were down 23-3 with 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And I got to be honest, like I was watching the game. First off, I was at a wedding all day on Saturday and I missed most of the games. And so I was excited to come back home because I knew this game would be on late. And then I wanted to watch Boise State kick off late against Hawaii at like 10 p.m. I was like, perfect. I can watch that game. But there was like, I turned the game because it was 23-3 with 7 minutes left. And Marshall, up until that point, were basically dominating Georgia Southern. And Georgia Southern made some mistakes in that game that sort of led to some of that domination. And then somehow magically, in a 6 minute and 45 second span, Georgia Southern scores 21 unanswered and beats them 24-23. It was absolutely insane.
Well, because of that comeback for Georgia Southern, now they're 2-0 in conference, of course. This is, Bennett wrote about this over on jmusportsnews.com. This game now is why we joined the Sun Belt. This game matters so much. If JMU wins, you're essentially in the driver's seat to win the East. If you lose, you need a lot of things to break right. I don't know if I want to pull out the old must win words this early in the season, but it feels darn close to a must win here for JMU. And it feels like a de facto conference championship, on October, whatever it's going to be, October 18th, whatever that date's going to be. Insanely fun in an insanely hostile environment, going down to a place JMU has never won.
Yeah, you said it. I mean, this is exactly what we wanted when we joined the Fun Belt conference, because every single game is going to matter. This is a huge game. I said it last week about the Coastal Carolina game. I said that game will sort of create the trajectory for this team for the rest of the season. And I feel no differently about this game. And to be quite frank with you, other than the Southern Miss game, the rest of the games on the schedule. And, this Georgia Southern team, they are averaging 30.3 points per game, but they are allowing 30.5 points per game. Now, if you compare that with JMU, we are averaging 39 points a game, and we are only giving up, I want to say 17.9, or maybe it's 19 points per game. But again, if you look at this matchup on paper, we absolutely have the advantage. Now, their starting quarterback, I don't know if there's any news about his injury.
He should be good to go. J.C. French should be the starter in Statesboro on Saturday.
So they announced that.
Let me triple check, but I'm 99% sure Clay Helton said, the head coach of Georgia Southern, said he can't lose his job because of an injury.
Yeah, of course he can't lose his job because of an injury, but did you see the injury? So I watched it. I mean, the dude it was textbook targeting. The refs did not even call targeting. They didn't even review it for targeting, but the defender literally lowered his head, speared him helmet to helmet, and knocked him out of the game. So I was assuming that French would be in concussion protocol this week.
He did not, according to the reports, the press conference earlier today from Clay Helton, JC French did not suffer a concussion, and he will be the starter against JMU. Dexter Williams, the guy who helped orchestrate the comeback, is the backup.
Wow. That is breaking news because I had no idea. I honestly, as I was preparing my thoughts for this week, I was expecting us to go against Dexter Williams. And it was going to be another situation where, we don't know if we're going to get French or if we're going to get Williams. And in a lot of ways, Williams might be the scarier of the two quarterbacks. But if you look at the way JC French has actually performed this season, the dude has actually played pretty well. I watched the Boise State game. French made some fantastic plays. And I don't know if you went back and watched that game, but he made, that was a cool, exciting, fun, out of conference game for Georgia Southern to host Boise State, which for many years has sort of been the standard bearer for the group of five. Those are the kind of games that I want our JMU athletic administration to schedule. Like those are the out of conference games that I want to see, right? Forget about the Ball States and what's the FCS team we played this year? The Gardner Webbs. Like, let's go play UNLV and Boise State and some of these teams. But if you watch that game, it was back and forth. Boise State, by the way, right now is the number 17 team in the country. As of the last poll. I don't know if they moved up for this poll, but the number 17 team in the country, and Georgia State led that game late in the fourth quarter, right? Back and forth against, and I got to apologize to this guy because a few weeks back I said Omarion Hampton was the best running back in the nation. That distinction absolutely goes to Ashton Genty. What a monster. That dude is a monster, bro. Have you watched him play a full game?
I've watched his highlights this season. The dude is not real. He had over 1,000 yards on 91. He has, if you only looked at his yards after contact this season, he would be a top 5 running back in the nation.
Yeah. No, he's unreal. And I can't figure out, it's like he runs through some big holes. So let's not get it twisted. Like his offensive line is opening up some massive holes, but even when they don't open up these holes, he's got a little Barry in him. He's got a little Barry and a little Emmett. He can make people miss, but he's also got some of the Emmitt Smith in him where he sort of just bounces off people, breaks tackles. But what he also has, like Barry, is he has the speed. If the guy is open, he's gone. And against Georgia Southern, he ran, I think he had 2 touchdown runs over 75 yards in that game. He had 267 total yards on 20 carries. He averaged 13.4 yards a carry, and then he had 6 touchdowns. Now, again, I said it last week. Coastal, we needed our running backs to have a big game. This should also be a big game for our running backs. And if I'm being completely candid with you, I see George Pettaway as a Ashton Genty type of talent. He may not have the eye-popping stats. We don't use George Pettaway in that same way. I believe George Pettaway can have a monster game against this defense as long as we scheme it up right, because this defense is absolutely susceptible to the run. If we look at their games this season, I just want to put this on wax. They gave up 360 rushing yards to Boise State, and it wasn't just Genty. The other kid, the true freshman for Boise State, came in and rushed for 119 yards in that game. He torched them. They gave up 227 rushing yards to Nevada. They gave up 112 yards to FCS, South Carolina State. They gave up 219 yards to Ole Miss. Now, they shut Georgia State down for 29 yards. Georgia State is not a rushing offense, but Georgia State had 356 yards passing. And then last week, Marshall had 200 yards rushing. So I expect a big day out of our offensive playmakers, specifically in the backfield. Now, have you watched a lot of Georgia Southern, or have you looked at any of their advanced stats and advanced metrics?
Yeah, I haven't watched a ton of their stuff. The few of the highlights, few clips from that Boise State game, because that was a game I did have money on. It was on Georgia Southern in that game, but they didn't win, so that's besides the point. But Georgia Southern, their offense is good. Their offense really isn't great. Like, their offense isn't what if you only watch the Boise State game, you would think their offense would be great this year. It's fine. Their defense, though, is abysmal. Like, their defense may be one of the worst overall units in the entire Sun Belt. They don't stop the pass particularly well. They don't slow down the run particularly well. Their special teams isn't particularly good. Opponents on average are starting on their own 33-yard line, which ranks 132nd in the nation out of 134 teams, I believe, are Division I FBS. I mean, they just don't do anything good. They don't do anything well. And then offensively, they're kind of just average passing the ball, kind of just average rushing the ball. When you look at their entire season as a whole, they can have pops. You can have Dexter Williams come in and rattle off 21 unanswered and be great. And of course, they're led by Clay Helton, who at the group of 5 level, may be one of the best offensive minds. I mean, the former head coach of USC finds his way to Georgia Southern, and his calling card is good quarterback play and good offensive coordinating. So they have the capability of going off and being a good offensive team, but they just haven't on the whole as the season's gone on.
Well, they do spread the ball around a lot on offense. I mean, they've got some weapons at the receiver position, and their tight end Fromm catches a lot of passes. Reminds me of sort of that Taylor Thompson, I'm always open, keep the drive alive sort of guy. And when you look at the two quarterbacks, right, Dexter Williams and JC French, you would think that Dexter Williams is the run threat. But if you have watched any Georgia Southern film this year, JC French will take off running, and he is very effective with his legs. So I do think that, sort of like the same game plan we had against Vasco, that's the exact same recipe that we will absolutely, I think, have to employ to slow down this Georgia Southern offense. I do think their offense is very capable, but to your point, they can't really necessarily stop anyone on defense. And their offense has been known to give the ball away, turn the ball over. And if we can get some turnovers, get points off those turnovers, it'll be a big day for the Dukes.
So the last 2 years under Cignetti, the secondary had always kind of been an issue. They were selling out to stop the run. That was their whole thing. And against Georgia Southern passes the ball a lot. They're one of the tops in the nation at passing the football. With this Lyle Hemphill defense, I'm not so worried about that anymore. You're almost playing into Lyle Hemphill's hand, where he's sitting back and he's like, all right, you don't want to run it into my defense? That's fine. I'll just have my guys who lead the nation in takeaways try to get takeaways, and it works for him. So that matchup used to scare me with Cignetti. With Lyle Hemphill, I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah, I agree with you. That is a fantastic point. And if it becomes a track meet, I think our team has the Usain Bolts and the Sha'Carri Richardsons. I think we score more points in this game. I mean, their defense has given up, they're averaging 478 yards given up per game. That is dead last in the Sun Belt. So AB3, our receivers, our running backs should absolutely have a day. So I'm going to call it Dukes go down and take care of business in Statesboro. Jack, I am thinking about going to the game. I got a good friend who is an App State fan and alum. He says that I should never actually make that trip down to Statesboro, but I've never been there, so I'm thinking about doing it. What are your thoughts there?
Go. Go. That'd be an awesome time.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go. I may rock this wonderful JMU football alumni club swag that I'm rocking tonight on To The House podcast. So shout out to the JMU football alumni club. But Jack, you know what time it is, man. It is time for What You Talking About, Willis.
What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about, Willis?
All right, so my What You Talking About, Willis, dude, it's real simple. And I don't want to sound like sour grapes or a sore loser. But I gotta say, for the ULM folks, the UL Monroe folks, who are still trying to gaslight us into believing that there were 20,000 people in that stadium in that game, like that we lost. Like we could all see the broadcast. There was nobody there. And maybe there were some people on the sort of the home side that didn't really show up on TV, kind of like ESPN did with our game on Thursday. I don't think they ever panned and gave us a full view of the large side of the mullet. It was only the short,
The
JV
better side of the mullet.
Yeah, right. And so maybe there was some of that, but there would have had to have been 20,000 seats on that home side at ULM for there to have been 20,000 people there, because there was nobody in that stadium during the broadcast. So please stop trying to gaslight us into believing that there were 6,000 less people there that night than we saw with our own eyes at Bridgeforth Stadium on Thursday night, right? Because we had 26,000 maniacs in the stands. And those two, Jack, if you can put this up, I don't know if you can do this in post, but if you could put up a picture of that stadium during post-production, then that would be amazing, because there was nobody there. So get out of my DMs, get off of the To the House podcast YouTube channel in the comments saying that there was a bunch of people there. There was nobody there, bro. I'm sorry. Stop gaslighting us. Nobody was there. So anyway, what you talking about, Willis, ULM? There was not 20,000 people there. I'll give you 12,000.
I got a picture.
All right, throw it up for us.
See if I can do this in a quick manner. If this is 20,000 people,
let's see it. Let's see it.
Will eat crow.
Yeah, I think they were counting. I think they were counting unborn babies, people still tailgating in the parking lot. All right, here we go. Yeah, that's 20,000.
Where?
There's no way.
Where?
Yeah. And granted, I mean, maybe is that like before the game? Is that halftime? Like
that's the entrance.
Yeah, so that's as the players are running into the game. And by the way, that's what I saw on TV. Like that's what it looked like on TV. So let's what you talking about, Willis? Man, there was not 20,000 people at that game. I'm sorry. So anyway, now let's transition as we take it to the house, Jack. And I talked about, looking at some of the YouTube comments. So, I mean, here's where I'm going to take it to the house tonight, because as I have reluctantly subjected myself to more and more commentary on social media and overall internet chatter, I'm noticing a pretty consistent theme across the Group of 5 college football landscape. Other fan bases don't really like our fans. Now, listen, I don't really give much credence to what I see or hear on social media. A place where you can post a picture of a sunrise and caption it with, "I love sunny days." And there will be people who will drag you in the comments section and argue that you should instead be more enamored with rainy days. But it's not just on social media. I'm hearing it on podcasts, on radio shows, and the story usually goes a little something like this. After a big JMU win, JMU fans are over the top. They're too cocky. After a big JMU loss, JMU fans are so fragile. After the NCAA denied our waiver last year, JMU fans are a bunch of crybabies. Now, as I often tell my kids, if you don't have haters, you're probably not doing something right. Look at LeBron James. The guy has had maybe the most dominant career ever in professional basketball, and yet people like me, yes, I'm a LeBron hater, refuse to acknowledge his greatness. By the way, Jack, MJ is the GOAT. And while I can maybe also agree that our fans are sometimes a little, let's say, overzealous, yours truly included, I honestly would not have it any other way. Because as I see it, your fan base can either be ignorant, apathetic, or enthusiastic. When we were FCS, many of our opposing fan bases were both ignorant and apathetic. To steal a line from Doughboy from one of my all-time favorite movies, Boys in the Hood, either they don't know, don't show, or don't care about what's going on in their school's athletic department. During my time at JMU, we were in the Atlantic 10 football conference, and I can remember traveling to the likes of Northeastern University, Rhode Island, and New Hampshire, and playing in empty middle school stadiums where the fans were largely comprised of family members, girlfriends, and athletic department staff people. Ignorance and apathy on full display. Now, of course, we didn't have the types of crowds you see in Bridgeforth today. And some of our fans back then might likely be wearing a Virginia Tech or a UVA shirt to the game. But we always had fans who cared. This is one of the reasons I was so excited to move to the FBS division and the Sun Belt Conference to play against other teams with fan bases who have the same level of energy and enthusiasm as us. And while there are still a few fan bases in the Sun Belt that are largely apathetic, ULM, there are some amazing enthusiastic fan bases in this conference, especially in the East. App State, Marshall, Coastal, ODU, and our opponent this week, Georgia Southern. Now, as JMU has burst onto the national scene over the last several years, there's been a fair amount of another word, antipathy. Thankfully, not from our fan base, but from everyone else. And I absolutely love it. Because while Richmond and William and Mary alums couldn't care less that we were beating them down every year, you better believe it matters a whole lot to the folks in Boone and Myrtle Beach and Huntington and, of course, Statesboro. So keep rooting, JMU Nation. Be loud and obnoxious. Embrace the haters, because it absolutely means we're doing something right. All right, JMU Nation, we have taken it to the house. Jack, tell them where they can find and follow To The House podcast and everything they need to know about the JMU Sports News Network.
Everything you need to know you can find by subscribing right here on your podcast feed, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts. Just hit the subscribe button and you'll never miss an episode of To The House. It drops every Monday night, Monday day, really depending on when we record. And you can subscribe, like, rate, all of that good stuff on the podcast app or over on YouTube. Just type in JMU Sports News Network. And you can follow along with To The House on Twitter and Instagram at JMU To The House.
Yeah, share the podcast, like the podcast, rate the podcast. Let's make this thing go. I am so looking forward to this game this week. I mean, you were right. This is why we joined the Sun Belt Conference. So let's take one to the house. Let's go, Dukes.
To the House is part of the JMU Sports News Network. New episodes of To the House with JMU Hall of Famer Delvin Joyce drop every Monday, and episodes of the JMU Sports News podcast drop in the middle of every week. Subscribe to the JMU Sports News Network wherever you find your podcast and never miss an episode. You can watch every episode of To the House on the JMU Sports News YouTube. Stay updated on social at JMU Sports News and at JMU To The House, and at our website, jmusportsnews.com.